All right, guys, welcome back to Biology Scope. We're going to get into population genetics. Now, population genetics demonstrates how genetics and evolution influence one another. Now, in any given population, there are random variations among individual organisms. So, the number of individuals that survive and reproduce in each generation is small compared to the number produced. Now, which individuals will survive and reproduce and which will not is determined by how well suited an organism is to its environment. Population is all the individuals of a species that live in the same area. A species is a group of organisms so similar to one another that they can breed and produce fertile offspring. Now, populations are important to the study of evolution because a population is the smallest unit in which evolution occurs. So, the term gene pool is commonly used to describe the total genetic information available in a population. So, the sum total of all of the alleles, of all of the genes, of all of the individuals in the population. Now, an allele frequency is the number of times that one allele occurs in a gene pool compared with the number of times that other alleles for the same gene may occur. So, allele frequency is determined by dividing the number of certain alleles by the total number of alleles for that trait in a population. So for this example, I've got all these little mice in this rectangle. So what is the allele frequency for a capital B? So, since each individual has two alleles, the gene pool for coat color in this population of mice consists of 20 alleles. So, how many of the 20 alleles are a capital B? 9. So, here's how we figured that out. We've got 9 big B's that are found here amongst the 20. So, we divided 9 by 20, which gives us 0.45, and you'll turn that into a percentage, which would entail be 45%. So, how many of the 20 alleles are little b? So, that would be 11, and you'd figure this out the same way we figured out the first one. Now, why is it important to know the allele frequencies in a population? Well, it allows us to determine if the population is changing and therefore evolving. Evolution is any change in the relative frequency of alleles in a population. So, evolution is the result of changes in the gene pool. So consider the following population of flowers. So these flowers show incomplete dominance for their color. So the color is determined by two alleles, a capital R and a lowercase r. So let's calculate the allele frequencies. All right, so we've got 4 of these red flowers, which are represented by big R, big R. And then we have 4 of these pink flowers, which are represented by big R, little r. So first, we want the frequency of big R down here. So out of these 8 flowers, each flower will get 2 alleles to give us 16 alleles in total. So we are looking for big R. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 out of the 16 alleles is a capital R, which equals to 75% of the allele frequency. So now we need to look for the frequency of little r. Well, we only got 4 little r's. So it'll be 4 over 16, which will equal 25% of the allele frequency. Now, imagine if we did the phenotypic ratios. So, did the phenotypic ratios change from one generation to the next? And would the allele frequencies change from one generation to the next? So, let's have a look. So, we already did these two on the previous page. Now, yes, the phenotypic ratio changed from one generation to the next because now, look at our second generation. We now see a white flower has emerged. So would that mean that the allele frequency changed from one generation to the next? No, it didn't. It didn't change because even though we have this white flower, we still have the same amount of our big R's and our little r's. So the allele frequencies didn't change even though the phenotypic ratios did. Now, the situation in which allele frequencies remain constant is called genetic equilibrium. So if the allele frequencies do not change, the population will continue to evolve. So, how does evolution occur then? Certain factors can and do cause changes in the allele frequencies in a population. Now, evolution is occurring when there is a change in the relative frequencies of alleles in a population. Now, the German physicist Wilhelm Weinberg and the British mathematician Godfrey Hardy independently showed that allele frequencies in a population tend to remain the same from one generation to the next unless acted on by outside forces. So, this principle is referred to as the Hardy-Weinberg genetic equilibrium. So, if the allele frequencies do not change, the population will not evolve. So, the Hardy-Weinberg principle describes a hypothetical population that is not evolving. So, for a population to be considered in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, it must satisfy 5 main conditions. The population must be very large. There is no migration, so individuals neither enter nor leave the population. There is no mutation, so the alleles will remain the same. Mating must be random, and there is no natural selection. So, true genetic equilibrium does not really exist. So, we do not really expect a natural population to be in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. If no population satisfies the 5 conditions, what's the point? So, the Hardy-Weinberg equation allows scientists to detect changes in the gene pool over time. So it provides a mechanism by which evolution can be viewed by observing changes in the frequency of alleles in a given population. So, how can genetic equilibrium be disrupted? So, evolution is the change in the allele frequencies of a population over time. There are 5 mechanisms of change that can cause the frequency of alleles to change in a population: mutations, gene flow, genetic drift, non random mating, natural selection. So these are the 5 things that can change the frequency of alleles in a population. So first, let's talk about mutation. So mutation is the ultimate source of new variations in a population. So it is a change in the nucleotide sequence of an organism's DNA. So a change of as little as 1 base pair in a gene with a point mutation can have an impact on the phenotype of a given organism. Now, many mutations are harmful and some have no effect. And on rare occasions, a mutation may actually make the organism better suited to the environment, enhancing its reproductive success, which is known as natural selection. An example of this is bacterial resistance and pesticide resistance in nature. Next, let's talk about gene flow. So, this is the movement of alleles into or out of a population as a result of the migration of individuals. So, immigration is the movement of individuals into a population. Emigration is the movement of individuals out of a population. So, gene flow can introduce new alleles into a population, and it can occur at a higher rate than mutation and increases genetic diversity in the new population. Next is genetic drift. So, over time, a series of chance occurrences can cause a change in all allele frequencies. So, this is based on chance events like natural disasters, for example. And this ignores adaptations. So, it results in a loss of genetic diversity. So, let's say we started out with this set of bugs. But we had a natural disaster occur, which can be a fire, for example. So this fire killed these 4 bugs. So now our new population no longer has these dark gray bugs. So now all of our bugs are going to be brown. That is how a genetic drift works. So another example of genetic drift is the American bison was hunted to near extinction. So the result is a population of bison with little genetic variation, even though the population has recovered over time. So let's talk about non-random mating. So many species do not mate randomly. They choose who they reproduce with. So this may cause the amplification of certain traits in a population. And this decreases genetic diversity in a population. So, in many species of birds, females tend to choose a mate based on certain traits. So, peacocks are one example. So, this tendency is referred to as sexual selection. Now, we have natural selection. Natural selection is the only cause of evolution that generally adapts a population to its environment. Natural selection is based on the differences in survival rates and reproductive success. Now, individuals in a population exhibit variations in their heritable traits, and those with traits that are better suited to their environment tend to produce more offspring than those with traits that are less suited. So, the other agents of evolution may affect populations in positive, negative, or neutral ways. Natural selection always has a positive effect because natural selection favors the transmission of favorable traits. All right, guys, that is all I have today for population genetics. I hope you enjoyed it and be sure to tune back in for our evolutionary patterns.